Honorable Acting Leader, please.
Honorable Acting Leader, member for St. Joseph.
And the mic, please.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do not leave the chair, and that this House resolve itself into standing finance committee.
Requested that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into standing finance committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
This House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
In the name of the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance. To move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $17,655,386 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2020 to 2021 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 10, 2020 to 2021, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 33, Ministry of Home Affairs, Information and Public Affairs, in the amount of $5,489,320.
Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I will promise the Chamber to be as brief as possible, was not giving way to comprehensiveness. The matters before the Chamber, Madam Chair, is to provide the Ministry of Home Affairs with supplementary funds to address a couple of very critical matters relating to its operations. I'll deal with the second one first, which relates to the prisons. As you are aware, Madam Chair, the reason that we are in curfew now is because we had a significant outbreak in COVID early in the year. The prison obviously was impacted, Madam Chair, and therefore as part of the response in terms of the security of that facility, the government engaged in terms of its quarantine exercise to bring that situation under order. And therefore, the sums being requested here for under that particular program for the prisons relates to the quarantine exercise that took place between the Hilton as well as Sambay Hotel, which were the two facilities that were used to accommodate prison officers during the time, obviously in terms of the management of the COVID outbreak at the prison. And therefore, the ministry is being given $942,940 to be able to settle those clearly unexpected sums with respect to that. The second piece relates to, critically, Madam Chair, the printery and the investment required to be able to replace what perhaps has been the printing press at the government printery, to pretty much upgrade the facilities to be much more efficient and digital in its process, and therefore these sums are critical with respect to being allowed the printery to do a much more efficient job as it relates to government's operations. We should appreciate that whilst we have been modernizing, the printery itself also has to modernize in order to be able to help push and deliver better services, much more cost efficient and less time, and therefore the investment here is to be able to help replace the sums of money with respect to that. And so, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 33, in the amount of $5,489,320 stand by.
Honorable Member Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Chair, I will be equally brief, or perhaps do even better than a learned friend from Christchurch East Central. I had a query as to whom this money was due and for what specifically. Program 243, the questions were answered. But I have a comment with respect to the old prison, not the new prison. The old prison, I've said this before, I continue to have a concern and I speak. Of course, the Honorable Speaker can't speak in this place for himself and his constituents. But I wonder with respect to the upkeep of the old prison, and I fear that if we do not properly so do, we could constitute a public health threat for the people of Lower Station Hill. Station Hill, actually, Dean's Village. Of course, I don't have access to the place, but I'm told that it is in a terrible state of disrepair and getting worse. And I just want to put that on the record, that I believe it is a matter to which some attention should be paid with the COVID public health threat, which we now have, with the dengue threat, which we now have. We don't want to add to that and have a specifically localized situation where perhaps because of pervasive presence of rodents and then in that big unoccupied, unused property, then we have a problem for the people of Dean's Village and Station Hill and Hinesbury Road. And I ask for some focus on behalf of the Honorable Speaker, who can't speak for himself. With respect to the Ministry of Home Affairs, Information and Public Affairs, the note of request specifically relates to equipment and machinery. My question goes a bit distant from that, but certainly in relation to the operations of this ministry. I have noticed the government has been utilizing the services in relation to its COVID briefings and COVID updates of a person still referred to as ambassador. I am asking for some clarity as to her status. I'm asking for some clarity as to her status because she was our representative at the UN. I'm asking, if it is not impolite to do so, for some information as to how she's being remunerated, because it bothers me that in 2021, the government is not able to find somebody who's already employed in the information sector in Barbados at GIS. The government is not able to find among its complement of members in this honorable house, 29 of them, somebody who can speak to these issues in a properly clear way so that Barbadians can understand. And we have to bring somebody from abroad, bring their assignment to an end, if that is the case, and pay them for the services they are rendering, if that is the case. Just asking for information.
Honorable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Madam Chair, I will not respond directly to the honourable member, but I will indicate that clearly the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will articulate the status of the ambassador. But suffice to say, I will leave that to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to address. The reality is that we are and I take the members' contribution with respect to the old Glengarry prisons to which you referred, and that matter is receiving the attention of government, but as you would appreciate, at this very critical time, COVID has meant that we have had to suspend some of the things that we would have loved to do, and therefore, at the appropriate time, we'll be able to have it addressed accordingly. So, Madam Chair, with those words, I'd like to move that head 33 stand by.
Question is that head 33 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 35, Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, in the amount of $1,216,107.
Honorable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I want to refer to Head 35 to the amount of $1,216,107 as an amount for the National Assistance Board as we are all aware, ma'am, the National Assistance Board has been functioning for more than 3.5 decades, and the institution has served Barbados well. It looks after the most vulnerable in our society, particularly the aged, but at times those who have disabilities, as our workers go to the various institutions across the island, particularly private homes, to be able to offer services. And as a result, it also has under its guardianship the housing of senior citizens who are living in their institutionalized, meaning particularly the Clyde Gollop Center, the Vauxhall Senior Citizens Home, the Lancaster House, and of course the Doris Dunn Center, where seniors go on a daily basis before COVID, because we are all under lockdown now as a result of that. But that facility offers the services to help to keep our aged more active as they grow from strength to strength. And so the amount of funds we're asking for are for multiple reasons. I know that the home helpers in particular, there are just over 150, but they serve over 1,000 recipients on a weekly basis. And of course, 200 of them are bedridden, so we know the arduous tasks that they have to work with. And with COVID coming in, it has really put a serious dent on the finances of the institution, because that would not have been budgeted for. That amount would not have been budgeted for the PPE. And therefore, I'm asking for these funds for the National Assistance Board, meaning the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs is seeking to have the funds for the National Assistance Board to be able to extend our services to the end of the financial year, looking after the maintenance of the operations of that institution. We have some funds we're asking for the NIS to the tune of $441,207.73. And this is as a result of us being not able to do the payments to the NIS from October 2020 to March 2021 because of the insufficient budgeting of the whole aspects. And indeed, we will have had to work very much in order to get funds to help us to pay for the PPE, to help to run us through those periods where it was most difficult last year. And indeed, again, this year, we have to continue to follow the protocol. So we got that obligation for the NIS. And then we also have the funds for our traveling officers. There are 9 of them, and they have not been able to receive their funds for a 3-month period, but they have been sojourning in this country day and night, attending to formal reports of emergencies and so on to carry out their duties. And these funds that we are asking for are to be able to help them to be able to get back on their feet. Indeed, a section of it too, sir, ma'am, is with reference to those who are retiring. Now, you would appreciate that the cohort of workers there would be persons in their 50s and 60s, because that institution would have started up, I believe, around 1981 in that general period. And so most of the staff there would be females, and they have reached the stage where many of them have retired. Unfortunately, there have been some deaths. 2 persons died during the period of their responsibilities that they were serving to the institution, and their benefits have come in for the estates. They have come in. That was not anything that would have been planned for in the budget, because we can't tell when somebody will die. And so their estates have been, the funds are helping for their estates, as well as 6 persons who have retired. And they would appreciate, ma'am, that many of Barbadians, they suffer with non-communicable diseases and so on. And while they would have been glad to work, many of them would have been medically boarded. And then when the medical board determined their too came up, that was not budgeted for. And that is to the tune of that $441,915 to be paid to those individuals. Now, the other aspect of it, ma'am, is to do with the utilities. Now, the institution, meaning the admin office, that would have been closed during the period where we had some challenges early in the COVID outbreak. And so we had to do some additional expenditure, especially with the sanitizing of the institution and all the different things we had to do with the social distancing. That would have incurred some funds, as well as at the Lancaster House, the Vauxhall Center, the Clyde Gollop Center, and the Doris Dunn Center, but particularly those first 3, where persons have been living under lockdown. more resources to do with the gas and the electricity and the water bills, and so they have also escalated. And so the utilities, the amount we are asking for in that full amount is $68,369.43. And I'm not going to detain the institution at this time, but the bigger part of it is to do with the supplies and materials to the tune of $30,248.21, where the persons who are in the institution, particularly the home helpers, having to visit the homes, we did not want for them to go into homes or for recipients to in any way impact on them when they're carrying out their duties, and therefore we have had to have had quite a high expenditure to make sure that the PPEs are made available for them as they went on their various duties, and that amount had been up to over $30,248, as well as other aspects of it, and the whole amount is just over $100,000. And you would appreciate, ma'am, that as time has gone on within the last few months, we had to be particularly responsible, but we have to pay the agents, the vendors who have been given the supplies, and so we are asking for this amount of $1,206,107 from Head 35 to go towards the payment of the vendors, as well as to settle all the other debts for the security, for the utilities, for the transportation of the workers who should have benefited, and as well as for all the other challenges with the pensions. And so I wish to ask, ma'am, that this $1,216,107 be stand part for the National Assistance Board, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank
Question is that Head 35 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 81, Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources, in the amount of $365,000.
Honorable member for St. John. Your mic.
This, Madam Chair, this $365,000 is in relation to the upgrade of the South Course sewage treatment plant, and it is being used for professional services, particularly engineering and procurement consultant contract. I will not detain the House any further, Madam Chair. I beg that Head 81 in the tune of $365,000 stand part.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the haste of the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Water Resources. And I know he's watching the time, but I would have thought he would have taken at least another minute to give us a little bit of an idea of what's happening with this South Coast sewage project. I see heavy emphasis on a vineyard project. Every time I look on my TV, I see the charming face of the Honorable Minister who just spoke, talking about carrying water into St. John and St. Joseph and St. Andrew, and all that is good. I wish him success, but we don't want to forget, I can't forget the South Coast project. I thought he would have taken a minute to give us some, perhaps when he's wrapping up, he will. What's the latest on the South Coast sewage project? And the last time I asked this question, I was given a very satisfactory answer by the then minister. What about contamination, possibly, of the waters off the South Coast because of the runoff of sewage into the ocean?
Honorable member for St. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to note for the honorable member that plans at the project are well in advance. The water at that location that you're concerned about is usually tested every week, so there are no issues in relation to that. In terms of the loan, we're in the final stages of finalizing that to have the project up and running. So really and truly, work on the South Coast plan is actually happening in earnest, and in short time, you will see the results of that, sir. I beg that this head stand par.
Question is that head 81 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 83, Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, in the amount of $1,689,925.
Honorable member for St. Lucie.
Madam Chair, I would not perhaps be as quick as the honorable member for St. John, but just to the House know in the throne speech in last year, Her Excellency did refer to the Lears Urban Land Lease and Food Security Project. This is the project between the government and landowner who is interested in the agricultural increase in terms of food production. Is a private-public partnership between government and CO Williams. There's 100 acres of land that will be brought into agricultural use for the stimulation of increased food production. 77 acres in the first instance will be for agriculture, and another 23 acres would be for livestock rearing. It is designed to create investment opportunities for Barbadians and generate employment, of course, and increasing the agricultural food production and enhancing food security. Of course, we have to put in some roads and so on in this project. Each acre will be probably about each person will be run similarly to the Spring Hall Land Lease project for about 100 persons, with each person getting approximately an acre or so. And this particular project basically would be to increase Barbados' food production and so on. And this fund is being sought to jumpstart that project there at Lears. And with those words, I beg to move that this head 83 in the sum of $1,689,925.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am. For obvious reasons, we would be always willing to support any effort that serves to increase our food production so we can have better level and sense of food security and food sovereignty, and of course reduce on imports. So we will be supportive of that, and especially in a context where smaller people are being benefited by utilization of traditionally large lands under the privileged use of others who have benefited historically. So we would be happy and supportive of that. But in recent times, I have been hearing a lot of boast about the level of food production in Barbados and the fact that agricultural output relative to food production has gone up by X percentage, 16, 18%. I don't quite recall the figure, I think it's around that. There is a view in Barbados, however, that we have not necessarily seen an increase in the level of food production performance of this year over last year, or year before, or the year before. But in fact, what has changed is that we are now making a different approach to measurements and quantifying, so that what has happened is that we have seen a change with reference to that, and not necessarily a change to the actual food production and agricultural output in terms of increase. Now that view might be wrong, and I'm sure the Honorable Minister is in a position to tell us in categorical terms that that is not true, and that the level of output at this stage is X as opposed to last when reckoned Y, and that the measures used to quantify are not what is indicating the difference.
Honorable Member for St. Lucie.
Madam Chair, the agricultural sector in this COVID environment, when our report would suggest that this sector was the only sector in the economy that performed last year with an increase at the end of up to June last year, we had about 16% increase production, but the overall production by the end of the year was about 1.9%. Now, we are doing various things in this particular area. We are pushing livestock production. We have a feed program that is that we will soon be launching in terms of a third cohort. We have increased in terms of our farmers, more farmers joining more acreage. I don't remember the figures off the top of my head now, but coming into production as we move on in this particular sector of the economy. But we will give a more fulsome report at the soon, perhaps further in this debate next week. In debate next week when we speak to the performance of agriculture in the entire sector during the course of the estimates debate.
Question is that head 83 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 86, Ministry of Health and Wellness. We figure that is to be amended, to which the minister will speak to. Some addition of some $324,708 brings you a total of $609,749. So head 86 in the amount of $609,749.
Honorable member for the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The supplementary that is being sought by the Ministry of Health and Wellness is to facilitate the payment to two contractors who are working on the community clinics in St. Andrew and St. Joseph. As this honorable chamber would recall, the two community clinics, along with the clinic in St. Thomas Community Clinic, were closed early last year because these facilities really were not they didn't have the capacity, the physical capacity to facilitate the delivery of healthcare services within a COVID environment, space, layout, and so on. But going back a bit, the two clinics at St. Andrew and St. Joseph were due for closure when the Barbados Labour Party assumed office. And as Minister of Health and Wellness, I really could not let that happen, since that would have been inconsistent with the government's policy of taking health care into the communities. And that has been part of our strategy for the last 3 years or so, which included, of course, things like the community healthcare officers working with the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for diabetic patients in particular, and trying to provide that assistance there. It also included working with the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, with the community workers there who are looking after the elderly. This is all part and parcel of that. So that when we decided that we were going to refurbish the two clinics in St. Andrew and St. Joseph, we had approached this honorable chamber for funding, which was approved, but subsequently we recognized that it was insufficient in that we had to do a complete rewiring of both facilities, so that a lot of electrical work had to be done, including the installation of ducts and also the provision of access, electronic access for those two facilities. And that is why we had to come here seeking the funding in the amount of $609,748.66. This for us is a very, very important thing, because the people of St. Andrew and Joseph really were deprived of these facilities for over a year, the use of these facilities. And even in the case of St. Joseph, even when in the pre-COVID period, when the facility was still being used, several rooms were not available because they were not in a good condition to be utilized. And so healthcare was being compromised, things like changing of bandages and some other things that really could not have taken place within that environment. And we felt it necessary to really have these two facilities brought up to par, and we will work on St. Thomas later, so that the communities that benefit from those services would be able to continue to benefit rather than having to trek all the way to Morris Bayer or Eunice Gibson or to the Glebe or not at all. And this for us was a very, very important thing, Madam Chair, because these community clinics have really provided human service to the people of those communities. And speaking to the medical officer of health, for example, of the Morris Bay Polyclinic, who is responsible for providing these services at St. Joseph and part of St. Andrew as well, but that comes on the Eunice Gibson. The medical officers have indicated to me that there are generations of persons from those communities who would have passed through the clinics, and people who came there as babies that they were now able to provide services for as young adults having their own children. And the community spirit and the integration, where the general practice nurse knew the names of all the persons who came, it really was something very special. And we believe strongly as a caring government that that is something that ought to be maintained. And so in keeping with our manifesto pledge and our promises to the people of Barbados, and in this case to the people of St. Andrew and St. Joseph, the two community clinics, the work have started, and we expect that in a few weeks' time that those two properties, those two installations will be returned to the people of the two parishes, and that we will be able to continue those services. So with those few words, I beg to move that head 86 in the tune of $609,748.66. Stamp part.
Question is that head 86 with amendment, stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 87, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, in the amount of $1,734,237.
Honorable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The sums of money being appropriated for the Ministry of Education in a couple of instances really reflect the impact that COVID has had on education. And it is important to note that the government responded in the first instance to ensure that whilst our children were able to return to school, that we made provision with respect to the new program, which engaged a number of school monitors to facilitate the good practice of physical distancing and following of the protocols within our schools once they were in session. And the sums being appropriated here, specifically for that program, Madam Chair, is to provide for the payment of national insurance contributions with respect to those persons engaged on that program, obviously then allowing them to be able to benefit from any of the claims that they may have to make during their term of engagement with the Ministry of Education. And you would recall that, Madam Chair, this was one of the responses to be able to bring back a level of normalcy, and we hope that with the reduction in COVID cases going forward, that we can get our children back to school as quickly as possible and able to continue to provide under this program. The other two measures, Madam Chair, I speak to very quickly, but equally important. The under sub-program 271 for special schools, 278 for special schools, Provision is being made here with respect to a grant to the school house for special needs. And it is instructive to note, Madam Chair, that the government of Barbados provides a range of grants to institutions, but school house is perhaps the only entity that does not currently receive support from government, but COVID certainly has had an impact on, one, the ability of persons to do the appropriate fundraising to be able to support the services that they provide to the children. I think I've already indicated to the chairman, but I should indicate just for the record that my son does attend the school. The reality is that they have had a significant time with respect to the impact of COVID. All during the first term of this academic year, they continue to provide daily services to all the students, and only when the lockdown came in January were they now resorted back to the online provisioning, but this is to support the good work that the school house for special needs are doing. But let me just take the opportunity to indicate that in our conversations with the Ministry of Education, and more broadly with respect to the Ministry of People Empowerment, we are looking at a much more comprehensive response to special needs and what is required, not just from the education perspective, but certainly in terms of, and as well as the Ministry of Health, specifically as it relates to the provision of dental services for persons with special needs, especially children, that even in this environment obviously requires very peculiar interventions. And therefore, we hope that in the near future, we'll be able to bring that comprehensive policy in place to ensure that nobody's left behind with respect to what is taking place, not just as it relates to COVID, but certainly with respect to the provision of all the services that we anticipate will be required for those persons. And so the sums of monies here, Madam Chair, is to give some support to the school, as well as under the tertiary program, the Codrington College, Madam Chair, equally has had a quite tough time in the circumstances. I'm sure the Bishop will support the government coming to the aid of an institution. Sorry, the honourable member for St. Michael West lead the opposition. With respect to being able to ensure that as an institution, like any other institution, providing services and viable services to the public, that we can ensure that good service can continue in the short term. So the reality is that these three requests here actually are almost a direct response to the impact of COVID, not just within the context of our primary schools, but certainly in the context of these other two institutions who have been delivering good work in the communities, one at the tertiary level, but I think in the case of School House, being able to provide education services to a number of students with special needs in the country. And so with those few words, Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 87 in the sum of $1,734,237 stand by.
Question is that head 87 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 92, Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, in the amount of $6,875,756.
Honorable member for St. James Central.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As Shakespeare would say, as brevity is the soul of wit and tediousness its limbs and outward flourishes, I shall be brief. The first aspect of this program, this supplementary, ma'am, is program 0157, which is seeking to secure on behalf of the Agency for Microenterprise Development what we commonly know as fund access, the sum of $6,500,000 for financial assistance towards micro business being facilitated during the period of national pause. Ma'am, you will recall that this House would have probably about a month ago approved the sum of $3.5 million for a similar purpose. You would equally recall, ma'am, that in order to mitigate the effect of the pandemic, there was a closure of business in Barbados, which took effect from February the 3rd of 2021. And again, ma'am, the effort to mitigate the financial impact arising from that closure on small business was the reason why we came before $43.5 million, and it is in furtherance of that matter that I am now here today. Ma'am, I suppose I should say that the ministry is indebted between when I first was here and now to the Ministry of Information Science and Technology for partnering with us in order to establish a seamless document way of making sure that we were able not only to facilitate the numerous applications that we have had, but to process them, to verify their legitimacy, and to deal with the matter of disbursements. I would want, Madam Chair, to speak specifically to the question of the substance of how the money is being spent, because I think that is what most people are interested in. For the period beginning 3rd of February and continuing to the 17th of February, ma'am, which is the first 2 weeks of the period of national pause, we would have received 6,122 applications. As of the 8th of March, and today is 9th, so that was as of yesterday, 3,407 persons were paid, and as of yesterday, 86 persons were awaiting disbursement pending the completion of the verification process. So that would give you, assuming that all went well with those 86, 3,493 people who would have been benefited from this financial assistance program of the government. The total amount disbursed thus far, ma'am, is $2,080,000. That is for the first 2 weeks of the period of national pause. Obviously, the disbursement process continues. There are some entities that would only have been closed during the first period. Then there are those that were allowed to reopen, and others had to remain closed during the extension and continuing until now. So that for the avoidance of doubt, a barber, for example, remained closed from the beginning right up until today and continues to remain closed. And all those barbers who were entitled at the beginning continue to be given their $250 or to be eligible for the $250 every week until when they are allowed by directive to reopen. Equally, since that time, we have settled with the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy the expansion of the program to include those people in the fishing industry, so fishermen and fish vendors are also now included. Ma'am, the sum that continues to be available at this point is $1,420,000, but you will recognize that in the context of 6,122 applicants, that is insufficient, and that is the reason why I am here today to seek the supplementary. I suppose, ma'am, I should also be a little bit more specific with regard to the categories of workers or categories of beneficiaries. Beauty services received or made 832 verified applications. And by beauty services, I'm referring to hairstylists, nail technicians, barbers, as I alluded to before. And in that category, we have paid $416,000, ma'am. People involved in the food services sector, for example, operators of canteens, operators of delis, they would have made 462 applications for that first 2 week period. And in that regard, we paid $231,000. Taxi operators, we received 280 applications for taxi operators for the first 2 week period. And in that regard, we have paid $140,000. Shops, we received 289 applications, which have been verified with regard to shops for that first 2 week period. And again, ma'am, they would have received $433,500. Bear in mind that with regard to the shops, they were entitled to be paid at a rate of $500 a week, as opposed to the $250 that were for every other category. And with regard to vendors, ma'am, we received 964 confirmed applications, verified applications from the vending community, and they would have benefited thus far for the 2-week period for $482,500. Ma'am, the other aspect of this supplementary refers to the Division of Energy and Natural Resources, which is also part of the ministry. And at program 114 of that division's accounting code, we request $375,756. And that sum, ma'am, is to assist us in being able to make disbursements to property owners in Barbados with regard to the payments that have to be made to them for what is loosely called royalties, but we prefer to call it the petroleum quota. And as you know, ma'am, there are some properties where the government is doing the necessary drilling, etc., and people are entitled to be compensated for the use of their land and the resources taken therefrom, and that is part of what this sum of money is about. I'm obliged, ma'am, and I would ask that this head stand part.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It would seem to me the honorable member is saying to us that with respect to disbursements under the Micro Enterprise Development Program, that is offering of assistance to small businesses during the national lockdown period. The achievement to date is about 50% persons who have been subsidized or assisted with the monies disbursed thus far. Means that there are about 50% of persons or businesses who have not yet been reached. I just wonder if the minister is satisfied as to the rate of pace at which the disbursements are being made. I know there must always be a concern over verification process, etc. But is the ministry satisfied with the rate of pace at which the disbursements are being made? Because I ask that, I get a lot of calls, I meet people, or people meet me on the street, Upper Broad Street, middle of Swan Street, and they're wondering what has happened with with this assistance that we heard about. So if the minister is in a position to say whether or not he's satisfied, the ministry is satisfied with the rate of pace of disbursements, or what might be the challenges apart from having to go through a careful verification process. The other thing is listed categories which have been supported, and he mentioned taxis. I do not know how far that has gone among taxi operators. I heard no mention of the ZR operators, those persons who are at that level in the provision of public transport through private-owned means or private-operated means. I wonder what is the position with them. Are they included, not included? If they're excluded, what is the basis for their exclusion? Because we have, in fact, gone through in the last month a serious lockdown, which would have impacted them. You can't lock down the country and don't expect that it would not affect transportation, which you categorize as an essential service, and expect to be on the road to get essential service workers to their jobs. But the numbers have been totally down with respect to people out there commuting public, and what is the position therefore with these other people that are ilk, who provide from privately operated interests a public service of transport.
Thank you. Honorable Member for St. James Central.
I thank the honorable member for his question, ma'am, and I say in cathedra, inside this House of Assembly, that which I've said ex cathedra, outside of the House of Assembly, in speaking to the press generally. The fact of the matter is, ma'am, that we have, with regard to the question of the speed of the disbursements, I have made it very clear that I wish with all my heart that we could go faster. But I indicated to this House when I first came here that part of the challenges we faced, even as early as at the very start of the process, was the unfortunate practice of some of our fellow Barbadians to seek to abuse what is really an effort on the part of the government to do that which is unprecedented, certainly within this hemisphere. And if I am to go a little bit further, that which has been set now as an example for Great Britain to follow. Those who follow these matters internationally, ma'am, will realize that the Chancellor of the Exchequer in England has now sought to model on that which we are doing in Barbados, a package of assistance of a similar nature. The fact of the matter is, ma'am, that it is a very difficult thing to achieve because of the fact that you have to ensure that people who are benefiting are genuinely involved in the area that they claim to be involved in. In some instances, it is an easier thing to do because you have existing registration processes. In reality and in practice, ma'am, in most cases, the registration process is very inadequate. In some cases, in some types of operation, there are some people who are still doing registration by writing in a book. So you have to then do a physical check to make sure that these people are actually doing that which they claim to be doing. There is no centralized registration in Barbados. One of the things that I am going to treat to as we evolve in fact, I'm going to come with the legislation shortly anyhow, looking at relooking and rethinking the micro, small, and medium-sized business sector in this country. Well, one of the things that we have to try to do, ma'am, is to get people to register their businesses and to bring some order to the structure that now exists so that there are people, we now have, ma'am, for example, if I look at the fishing industry, my ministry will have responsibility for this disbursement. My ministry will have the responsibility for treating to these folks in the fishing sector as business persons, but they register, ma'am, with the Ministry of Agriculture to do something under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy. Similarly, people who are vending on the beach, legitimate business people or entrepreneurs in their own right, but registered, ma'am, with the Ministry of the Environment to do something under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy. So it is an effort that must now take place to bring a form of order to a process that has obviously bothered this country quietly for a long time, but COVID, as with everything else, has laid this bare. I hope that that explains to the honorable member the challenge that we face. As I said, we have brought on additional members of staff. We have dedicated persons who, for example, may have been in doing reception type work. Honorable member, give me a chance. Cynthia. Yeah, doing reception type work and so on. But to now come and work with the team that is trying to do all of the background verification. But it is unfortunately made a more tedious process by the instinct of some of our fellow citizens to try to abuse the goodwill of the state. With regard to the question of the ZR drivers, ma'am, I want to say here and now, I recognize that the community of persons driving public transport, public service vehicles are legitimate business persons in their own right. Where the distinction was drawn is because of the fact that all of these people who are benefiting by way of this financial assistance package of the government are benefiting because their business was brought to cessation. Cessation only has one meaning. It was brought to a halt. The fact of the matter is that under the COVID-19 directives, persons in the PSV sector were still allowed to operate, and ma'am, are still allowed to operate. And therefore, we can't treat to them on equal footing as you would the vendor who was told, stay home, you cannot sell, you cannot play your trade. You can't treat them on equal footing, ma'am, as you can to the person who is a cosmetologist who was told, do not go to work, do not open your doors, have nobody in there, do no business. Pardon? Yes. And so therefore, ma'am, while those persons are still in that state of affairs, they are materially different from from that which the PSV sector has experienced. I don't say that lightly in here because I want the leader of the opposition to know that on Friday night, last Friday night, at 10:30 in the Friday evening, I ended a meeting with that sector on Zoom. And I indicated to them, and the meeting would have begun around 7 in the evening, and I indicated to them, ma'am, that I fully understand and appreciate what their challenges are, but I don't think that this package, or this relief package, is the best possible route to assist them. And therefore, what I've asked for them to do and to come back to me on within a period of 2 weeks from then is to get together among themselves and let us have, or let us as the government and me as the representative of government have the benefit of a clear understanding of what some of their major priorities are with regard to how best we can lift that sector up and transform it in the way in which it needs to be transformed. Now, let me say equally, ma'am, and very briefly too, that, you know, the challenge, the challenge here is that it is a two-way street. It is a two-way street. And therefore, matters relating to law enforcement, matters relating to the views of the insurance sector, etc., have also to be taken into consideration. But I give the House the undertaking that I will, with the Minister responsible for finance in the Ministry of Finance, rethink and rework a program of policy which we can look at with regard to this important aspect of public transportation in Barbados. I'm obliged to you, ma'am.
Question is that head 92 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Your mic, your mic.
Beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one resolution in Standing Committee of Finance. The debate.
Question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one money resolution in Standing Finance Committee with amendment. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one money resolution.
Beg to move this resolution be read a first time.
The question is that this resolution be read a first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this resolution be read a second time.
Second.
Question is that this resolution be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be agreed to.
Second.
The question is that this resolution be now agreed to. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution now stands passed.
Mr. Speaker, this concludes our business at Parliament for today. I had hoped that we would have been able to finish before now, but government business, the public matter, public affairs do take precedence. We hope everyone will get home safely and before the curfew hour expires. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this, let me indicate that the estimates debate commences on Monday of next week, and the estimates will be have been laid electronically, so that will be laid electronically, so that members will have it within the next few hours, I believe. And with those words, I beg to move then that we adjourn until Monday 15th of March.
What time is it?
At 10 in the morning.
The question is that this House stands adjourned until Monday, the 15th day of March, 2021, at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Monday, the 15th day of March, 2021, at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.